Hey, it's Tina with Sid Happens Dog Training and Behavior, and I want to do follow-up video for the sequencing video last week. So we got two responses, one from Rachel, one from Cassie. One was our dogs lose their marbles when the doorbell rings or somebody comes to the door knocking. The other one was our dogs lose their marbles in anticipation of being fed. And I did clarify on the thread, okay, are you talking about the dogs get amped up when you're preparing people food or dog food? And Cassie clarified that it was dog food. So what I would say is for both of these situations, there's a little bit of counter conditioning that needs to happen first, right? The dogs have already learned an association. They've learned, they believe, right, that pick up the dog food bowl means lose your marbles and run around like lunatics. And that's not actually what we want them to learn. In both of these households, in addition, there are multiple dogs. So that complicates matters. I'm never, ever going to recommend that we try to train multiple dogs at the same time. You have to, in my experience, I'm sure you'll find somebody to argue with me, train one dog at a time when behavior is strong, then start trying to do combinations of dogs so that they have a baseline learning before we complicate matters with the pressure of an additional dog. And of course, there's considerations like resource guarding and all that stuff too that needs to be considered. So let me start with the dog food bowl one because that's an easy one to start, and then I'll talk about the doorbell one. But the methodology is somewhat similar. So one, you need to decide what you want the dogs to do instead of what they're doing. And I find this is where most of us fall down. Like we know we don't want the screaming and yelling, but we don't necessarily recognize what we want the dog to do instead. So actually for both of the scenarios we're talking about, both the doorbell and for food prep for dogs, my answer is the same. Dogs go to crates. It prevents door dashing. It prevents potential squabbles between the dogs. It prevents me tripping over them in the kitchen. It prevents jumping up on guests. It prevents a whole bunch of stuff. So I like quick, easy, simple, like just go to your crates. So one, I would be building a go to your crate cue, which in our house is bedtime. So as you hear me doing this example, you'll hear me say bedtime. That means go to your crate. So first I would start with desensitizing. So we're going to pretend this is a dog food bowl, even though it's a stapler. And what I would do is randomly during the day, one dog at a time, I would pick up the dog food bowl. If the dog starts to dance around, I would put the bowl back down and then go on about my business. Dog settles out, pick up the dog food bowl, put it back down again. Pick up the dog food bowl, put it back down again until when I pick up the dog food bowl, the dog goes, yeah, no, whatever. It doesn't mean what I think it means. Like you're not feeding us. From there, with the dog food bowl example, I would I would take the dog food bowl close to the dog's crate. I would pick up the dog food bowl, bedtime, reinforce the dog in the crate. And I would put that pause in there. That was actually intentional, not just me flaking out on you. So that what I'm looking for is the moment the dog starts to put it together, that I pick up the bowl and the dog heads to the crate. I'm like, brilliant. You're the smartest dog in the whole world. And then, somewhere between 60 and 10,000 repetitions for the dog to get the behavior really strong. Now, I'm using the dog food bowl as the trigger because for most dogs, when we pick up the dog food bowl is when they begin losing their Cocoa Puffs. But if your dog is keying off of something earlier in the sequence, then you begin with that, of course. I'm happy to pull that apart, though, Cassie, you're smart and pretty and could totally do this on your own. Happy to backstop you if you want help. Okay, so the doorbell one's a little bit different, right? Rachel's dogs are fearful, so their answer of the doorbell means, fire-breathing dragons that are going to decimate the entire family are at the door. So it's a little bit different response. And we have a little bit of that response here at, the Casa de Taunton too. So I would work on counter conditioning and desensitizing knocking and doorbell, and YouTube is a fantastic tool for that, right? So if I'm going to do it lazy and try to do all the dogs at the same time, I'm going to prepare fabulous Kongs. Everybody's going to go in their crates. I'm going to look up a doorbell or knocking sound effect. I'm going to turn the volume way, 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 way down. And I'm going to monitor the dogs, watching for stress for that moment as I slowly increase the volume where the dogs are like nosh, nosh, nosh on a Kong. And they go, did I hear the doorbell? Like that's as big a response as I want. I don't want barking. I don't want carrying on. So that typically is going to be pretty quiet in the beginning. Now, if you are a more robust person than I am and you have more energy, you can do a 1-to-1. So same thing, volume very low, you have a pile of treats, and when the quiet doorbell sound happens, you toss a treat to your dog. That is a less lazy version. I'm all about the lazy dog training. Okay, so slowly over time, our exposures, I'm talking weeks here, people, go from super quiet to louder than the actual doorbell really is. Right? Then, same thing we did with the dog food bowl. So now that we have dogs who, when the doorbell rings, they go, huh, that's interesting. We doorbell sound, bedtime. Doorbell sound, bedtime. Doorbell sound, bedtime. Until when the doorbell or knocking happens, the dogs go to the crate. Brilliant dogs, you're the smartest dogs in the whole world. 60 to 10,000 repetitions, which actually doesn't take as long as you might think. And boom, we've got dogs who are doing it. And you have to build the behavior really strong because when real life happens, it's going to be messy, right? And there is a messy middle. So one of the things I would say is when your doorbell rings and you weren't anticipating it, I'm either going to totally and completely ignore it like it didn't happen, or I'm going to go into the kitchen, grab a handful of dog food and say bedtime and help them and redirect them to their crates. So hopefully that was a relatively concise how to completely rehab your dog over two things that most households are going to struggle with. They're going to struggle with dogs being loop-de-loo at the door, and they're going to struggle with dogs being super excited and amped up because, oh my God, it's feeding time and it's really awesome. The other thing that bears mentioning is you do not have to feed dogs the exact, like you don't have to run the whole sequence. So I have totally, when I was breaking this down for a dog, fixed a dog food bowl at 2:00 and not fed the dog till 6, right? I didn't add the water or whatever, but I slowed down the process so that as the dog's amping up, I'm going, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So it's just breaking it apart and slowing it all down. So sometimes I just don't feed out of a bowl, right? I feed out of a some sort of food dispensing toy that's like a whole different thing. And honestly, if you have an adult dogs, which Cassie does, her dogs are all adults, they were not doing potty training. So we can put them on a more flexible meal plan where maybe one is eating in the backyard, beating the heck out of a Kong wobbler, and another one is doing hand feeding in another room, and the third one has their food frozen in a Kong, and now we're not dealing with dog food bowls at all. So you can float over the hazard, is I guess what I'm trying to say, but still do enrichment and make it not such a big deal. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. If you have other sequences, let me know. You can hashtag my one question. I need questions, people. So I'm probably going to record a couple that have come up this week to use and have in the can for upcoming weeks. But y'all, give me something to work with. Love you. You're smart and pretty. Mwah. Bye-bye.